Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We have Alex Kotran on the line, and he's CEO and founder of the AI Education Project, also known as AI-EDU. And this particular interview is part of our Milken Global Conference coverage series, where we're bringing you the best of attendees and participants of the Milken Global Conference. So first thing first, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we got a lot to talk about. One of my favorite topics is education and melding that with AI and what's going on, especially in K through 12 education. Why is it so important? So we're going to get into that and a whole lot more. I want to get into AI EDU, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the Milken Global Conference. So I understand you went this year. How was the experience?
It was my first time.
Ooh, I like that, Alex. I like hearing first time, the noobs.
It's very much a noob. Felt out of my element, but yeah, first of all, the Hilton is a complete zoo. I mean, you're like walking around in every single corner. There's
I love it.
News setups and like 3 different receptions happening and actors sitting on a panel and senior White House officials just like having a sidebar right next to the check-in desk. So yeah, and I met a bunch of really cool, extremely accomplished people. Got to connect with some actually old friends of mine from my days in politics who were there in sort of different capacities.
Yeah.
But yeah, super high level group. I mean, I felt very privileged to be in a space with them.
Yeah, I call it like my Super Bowl of conferences every year. I'm telling you, I love it. I mean, I cover a lot of conferences, but that one, we're now, I think, going on 4 years covering it, and it's just been a lot of fun. And the community around there is what threw me, and I still remember this, the first time I was there. What kind of threw me at first was that that many individuals that are, really high level, but very approachable. I don't know if it's something about I'm saying this in jest for everybody listening, but the maximum security at the Hilton, like to get into that thing is really interesting, but you just have a different feel. It's like you're on an island to me. What? It's like an island, like you're just secluded and everybody's together.
Yeah, when I hear all the action is in the after parties, various mansions in the hills.
Oh yeah, that's
sadly
true.
I didn't get the invite too, but it's on my
you're on my list.
Card next year.
You're
hopefully.
on my list this time, Alex. Don't worry, we'll get you some invites for next year. This was just your first year. It's fine. You're coming on this show, so you'll definitely be on our list for invites for some of those. But you're right. I covered and did interviews at a couple of those after sets, and just like I do on the set, and I think that'll be part of this series that you're part of as well. So more to come, Alex. It's going to be fun. Well, let's switch it up a bit here. I do want to get into what you're doing as well at the AI EDU. So first off, I see you're a founder of it. What led to creating this project and founding this organization?
Bit of a long story. The short version is grew up in Ohio, studied politics at Ohio State, wanted to just do political stuff. Like I watched the movie, you've seen the movie The Ides of March. That was like one of my favorite movies. Just like that is the life I wanted to live, be a political operative. And so I worked on the President Obama's re-election campaign, went to DC, did some stuff, literally slept on couches, and then eventually got an appointment working on the Affordable Care Act and doing like state level outreach. And that led me down, basically after the administration went into tech, not because I was like so smart and knew AI was the future. I wanted to come to San Francisco. But I did find myself in AI, and so I've been in the AI space for about 10 years. Started out doing like AI ethics and policy and comms, and then shifted into like corporate social responsibility and AI governance. Was doing obviously hired by this AI company. The first company to build AI for the legal sector back in 2001, a company called H5. Nicholas Khan was the CEO, and he was like, I want you to come on and just do advanced governance of AI and the rule of law. So what we built was a judicial training program. We partnered with the UN and NYU Law and trained thousands of judges around the world. So that's kind of where I started in AI literacy, was actually training judges. And my parents are both educators. Mom has taught in active public schools for her whole life, basically. So last year, actually, before she retired. And so I had this conversation where she was like, oh, you're teaching judges about AI? You should come to my school and you should teach my kids. And I was kind of flippant. It was like, surely you're teaching the future workers about, maybe you don't call it AI, but the future of work. And she responded, well, what's the future of work?
Oh, wow.
And so I had this realization that in places like Milken, Milken Global, at all the conferences I was attending, the future of work was like half of the sessions, and everybody was writing blogs. The World Economic Forum, like the theme of Davos was the Fourth Industrial Revolution in 2016. And this is 2018. So then my next step was, maybe Akron Public Schools is unique. So I was like looking around for, where's there some curriculum for K-12 around AI. And if anybody could find that, would be me. I mean, I was, on the inner circle of what was at the time a very small AI community. And nothing existed. There was like some, like things here and there, like mostly for computer science programs and like AP computer science. Akron Public Schools, 20,000 students today, I think 3 computer science teachers. At the time, it was 1. So that wouldn't work for my mom. My mom's school didn't have any CS teachers. So that was where the idea came from, and that's why we were so early to this. Because there were people talking about AI. It was not, AI was a surprise for a lot of folks, but even GPT-3, it was around from like 2020. So people were using it. It just wasn't into the zeitgeist. And then, of course, ChatGPT comes around and suddenly sort of like thrust upon everybody. And for schools in particular, just purely even dealing with things like cheating or students using it as a shortcut, it was sort of forced them to deal with it. It was something they couldn't ignore. And so we went from being a very small and humble organization into, I think I can fairly say we're the national leader in something very specific, which is AI readiness. And that's what we really have been pushing from the very beginning, which is every single student in school should learn about AI. And also schools need to transform to ensure that kids are building the skills that they're going to need in order to thrive in a world where AI is everywhere. And that's what we do.
Alex, can you define maybe the difference between, because I don't want to assume everybody understands this, AI readiness as opposed to AI literacy, and why this is an urgent issue?
Yeah, I think like if you were transported to 2007 and you were the Secretary of Education, your tentpole priority wouldn't be cell phone literacy or like smartphone literacy, even though it's completely correct to say that, 10 years later, you won't be able to hold a job. Nobody will hire you. This will be a critical skill. Using a smartphone is going to be like a completely integrated part of everyday work and life. So that is correct. But just because you know how to use your phone, that's not necessarily going to get you a job. In fact, it almost certainly won't get you a job. And if you were to apply to a job and talk about how good you are at using your smartphone, my guess is you're not going to go to that next interview, right? So there's more to what ensures that students are on a path to actually a successful career and a career pathway than just the technology. And the same applies for AI. So right now what's in vogue is AI literacy. So everybody needs to understand AI, what it is, how to use it, roughly how it works, why is data so important, how to use it safely, responsibly, effectively. But what we're saying is that's not enough. Because what matters at the end of the day is how do you command economic value in the job market. And the rhetoric right now from the AI enthusiasts is like AI is going to democratize. It's going to democratize access to coding. It's going to democratize access to financial analysis and design and research. And I'm paraphrasing the labor economist, maybe the labor economist at MIT. His name's David Otter. I wouldn't even be surprised if he was at Milken. And he talks about the difference between an air traffic controller and a crosswalk coordinator. An air traffic controller makes about 4 times as much as a crosswalk coordinator. They both do these very important things for society. We certainly would pay lots of money if we needed to ensure kids don't get run over in the street. But the reason the air traffic controller makes more is because it's hard to acquire that expertise, whereas anybody can be a crosswalk coordinator. So one of the big unanswered questions is, to what degree is using AI and knowing how to use AI going to be a marketable skill or just sort of like an expected skill? And if it's expected, then what else will students need to happen in order to differentiate? And so AI readiness kind of tries to capture that. It's being ready for that world. And we can talk about exactly what that could be. It's all hypotheses. We don't know. We don't know how powerful AI is going to get. There's some pretty broad scope of predictions or trajectories. And it's this thing that the nerds in Silicon Valley love to chat about at their happy hours. Literally, people just ask you, like, what's your over-under on AGI or whatever it is.
Funny. Yeah. That's
so
funny.
We don't know. And so that's the thing. AI readiness is, but we do know that everybody needs to be ready for that. And be ready for something that we don't know.
So speaking of that, though, speaking of that too, Alex, I'm curious from your end, like, because you live in this space. Like, what scares you or excites you, like, in this space going forward, especially related to education?
Where should I start with this? I mean, what's exciting is there's certainly a really tremendous scope of ways that AI is going to transform people's lives for the better. Real-time transcription is a complete game changer. If a friend of mine was just diagnosed with ALS, real-time transcription has enabled him to continue communicating seamlessly. Self-driving cars, setting aside the question of what are all the Uber drivers going to do, they are safer. I mean, I have a lot of friends who have had very scary experiences with Uber drivers. To say nothing of actually democratizing expertise may not be good for workers, but for consumers, it's going to be amazing. I mean, if you're able to democratize access to healthcare, it's very easy to see how that could be like truly a game changer in scientific research and unlocking more human capacity and also allowing us to do less mundane things. As long as we can figure out what the other things are. The problem is we don't know how long it's going to be until AGI, and the AI companies are all very, excited and bullish on AGI being around the corner, but they're obviously incentivized to say that. They're trying to raise capital, and investors don't want to wait 10 years. So we really don't know. But what we do know is that the pathway to AGI is going to be, fraught with a lot of disruption, especially, and I think maybe foremost, is the displacement of work. This is the fundamental part of society. It's really, really important. And what we're also hearing now is there's a drumbeat of, basically since April, Derek Thompson published this article about unemployment rates being really high with new grads. And Ezra Klein published a book, I think, with Derek Thompson called Abundance, but also talked about this. And then you had all these CEOs of companies like Klarna, companies like, It was Klarna, UPS, I think Zapier, IBM, Amazon, Microsoft. I mean, you had all these companies that were doing layoffs, and these layoffs were specifically attributed to artificial intelligence and AI basically enabling them to displace people. So this whole theoretical world of AI replacing jobs is getting very real. And we're not getting a ton of examples of these jobs of the future, these jobs that AI is going to create, because that's the argument, is it is going to unlock productivity and there will be demand for new things, which is historically exactly how it's played out. From Jevons paradox, as fuel efficiency standards got better and better, emissions increased because people just were driving more. So that's the hope, but it's just a hope. It's not a rule of economics. It's just based on a relatively limited data set. And AI really feels different. It's not just a calculator. It's not just a car or even a computer, which have can be incredibly powerful, but with very specific and narrow applications. AI is, even before AGI, artificial general intelligence, it still has this really broad set of general applications. And, a lot of knowledge work and a lot of, frankly, low-skilled, work is directly in the crosshairs. It's no longer just theoretical. It's companies are selling these products. They're billboards in San Francisco, at least, a company called Artisan AI, which is, I think it's stop hiring humans or something to that effect. So it's in everybody's face. And that's, I think, what scares me the most. And I think that's what needs to be the top priority for everybody, for policymakers, for parents, for schools, and for companies.
Well, Alex, I'm telling you this, you gave me some new perspective, which I appreciate, and I wasn't even thinking as the differences between what AI literacy and AI readiness meant, but now I'm much more educated. I'm sure my audience is as well. That being said, if somebody wants to follow up and continue to follow your work or learn more about AI EDU, how do they do that?
I mean, we have a website, aiedu.org. That's me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, but it is where all my work friends are at. And I have Substack, which, it's actually been almost 9,000 subscribers. Still very small by any good standard, but that's kind of where I've just been putting my emerging thoughts as this all unfolds. So
amazing. And just so everybody knows, we'll put the links in the show notes so that you can go out and check out Alex's work. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Alex, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.